going on, everybody? This is your man Chuck Creekmer, aka Jigsaw. I'm here. Soph. I'm calling you Soph from now on. I feel like I know you now.
Okay.
Sophia Chang. Now, Sophia, I have to say, first of all, I'm just gonna preface this with a bunch of personal stuff. So we've never met. Well, we haven't met until recently. And then I'm at this Wu-Tang American Saga premiere, and I've been in the game a minute, so you're checking the room out, you're seeing who's who, what's what, and I keep seeing Sophia, and I'm like, who is this? Who? Like, I have no clue. I'm not gonna lie, I have no clue, and so I never do this. As a lot of people know, I'm an introvert. I'm to myself, and I'm an observer. I'm like, man, I gotta take a picture with her. I don't know who she is. But I'm going to take a picture with her because I know I should take a picture with her just because. So randomly, I got a selfie with you, and I was like, and then I found out later you have this amazing book, an audio book, called The Baddest Bitch in the Room.
Hoodies for sale. Hoodies for sale on bonfire.com/baddestbitch.
Yo. And so now I feel like I'm friends with you.
Okay.
Because I've listened to the whole book, and listening is not something I do very well. I read well, I write well. But in this day and age, it's hard to get people's attention. Get people's attention and keep their attention.
Yeah.
But your book is really, really amazing.
Thank you, Chuck.
Yeah.
Thank you.
It really is. And so we're gonna talk about it in a minute. But first I want you to tell people who you are, if you can do that in a elevator pitch manner, and then we'll get into the whole depth of it.
Okay. Hello, world. My name is Sophia Chang, and I'm the baddest bitch in the room. I was the first Asian woman in hip-hop. I moved to New York in '87, worked at Paul Simon. Then I worked at Atlantic Records doing alternative marketing. Then I did A&R at Jive, where I signed Hyro, where I signed Souls of Mischief and Casual, and then I left there to do a marketing company, and then I left there to run Razor Sharp Records for the RZA. Peace, Rakim. And then I stopped doing that, and I managed Old Dirty Bastard, God rest his soul. He was my first management client. And then I met my ex, Sri Ming, who's a 34th generation Shaolin monk. And I left the music business, hard right out of the music business, to run his temple and to train 15 hours a week and to have 2 children. Got back into kind of music through film and television, managed the RZA, managed the Jizza, Raphael Sadiq, D'Angelo, Q-Tip, A Tribe Called Quest. Ran Cinematic Music Group, ran Pro Era Records for Joey Baddest. Hey, Joey, love you. I did. I ran Pro Era for Joey, and then I decided to stop all of that, and I wrote this memoir. And just to be clear, I am no longer managing rappers, so please don't send me your SoundCloud and YouTube links. I never want to chase another rapper for the rest of my fucking life. So that's me in a nutshell.
Wow. Okay. So it's a big nutshell. Big nutshell. Especially after you read the book or listen to it. I keep saying read, but listen to. Mm-hmm. It's through Audible, and I related to it. I gotta admit, as a person who interviews people, pretty much his whole career, and more or less being behind the scenes.
How long have you done this?
My company, AllHipHop, we've been around since '98.
But you look like you're only 24.
Thank you.
Look.
Thank you. I love these. Oh, man. I feel so good now. No. Thanks. But, yeah. So
congratulations.
It's almost amazing that our paths have not crossed this far.
But you know what? I mean, 95, I left.
Okay.
So it's not a surprise. I mean, post 95, I was really not in the scene anymore until I came back much, much later.
Okay. So that's kind of when you started training. And you were more or less married.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah, right, gotcha. And you have kids too.
I do.
Which is, to me, amazing.
Yeah.
To be so impactful, but also having kids is tough.
Especially for the mother. Yeah. Do you have children?
I do.
How old are your children?
My daughter is a teenager. I never say the specific age, just in case
some
creepy guy.
Oh, that's all right. I have 2 children, 17 and 19. And, they're big and they're grown. And, of course, for the mother, it's a juggling act. Because, God bless the fathers.
Yeah.
they can never do what we do.
Yeah,
First of all, carry the child for 10 months and then shit out a watermelon. How about that?
I can't do that. I cannot do that. Definitely. Well, let's talk about stuff. I mean, obviously, let's talk about. I want to start with Wu-Tang.
Okay.
That's the obvious grab and hook for an audience that we have. How was it? I mean, it was amazing hearing the relationship, how close you guys were, and how protective they were. And I was amazed because I've met or known a lot of these guys. I mean, Meth and me, I mean, it was never like that great because he hated journalists and he was always hard to talk to.
Really?
For me. Now, maybe that's some
I'm sure that's
masculine
not
energy. I don't journalists, artists, energy. I have no idea. I've always been a friend to almost every rapper. Total allegiance to hip hop.
Well, let me give you just a quick analysis of that. Meth is the most empathetic, winsome character I know. He's like my son. They're both Pisceans. They are super sensitive, super empathetic, really keyed into energy. The only reason I can think that he may not have been his usual incredibly congenial self is because Meth from the gate, like from 93, was the one that everybody wanted to interview. Right. And with good reason. Yeah. Right? He's clearly the star of the group. He's so effusive and, charismatic and all that. So maybe you caught him on a day where he was at the end of, I've done 15 interviews, right? And I've kind of carried the lion's share, and that's not anybody else's fault. Yeah. He was often the person that journalists requested specifically. Yeah.
You also managed Old Dirty, which I can't imagine doing based on what I've seen, some of what I know, and you managed him in his prime.
I did manage him in his prime.
Prime Old Dirty.
So managing ODB, that might sound oxymoronic. Look, a lot of it was damage control, right, Chuck? He definitely had an addictive behavior. When I was managing him, he was addicted to alcohol. I think that he was addicted to sex. He had not started any drug. I mean, he didn't even smoke weed when I managed him. I remember him being like, Meth, I hate the smell, put that out. I hate the smell of that. And then obviously things progressed and went down a bad path. But what I would really want people to know about Dirty, and I called him Asan Unique, as you know, is his righteous 5% name, is that if you didn't already know this, he was incredibly smart. He was so smart. And you might not have gotten that from him the way that you do from a RZA or from a GZA, because of how they present, but he was so smart and so intellectually curious. He was dead loyal. He was hyper protective. He was really funny. He was kind. He was generous. And the times that we spent one-on-one, I think, Chuck, that for me, the most remarkable moments of my time in hip hop were the times that I got to spend one-on-one with the artist, because everything got stripped away. Right. Dirty said to me, Sophie, I love the shit out of you, and the reason I love you so much is because I don't have to be Old Dirty when I'm with you. Yeah. I can be Asan Unique. And I think that was a relationship that we had, and frankly that I think that I have with all artists. But I appreciate you saying what you do about seeing the Clan differently, or hearing them differently, or seeing them differently through listening to the audiobook, because what I tried to do, Chuck, was to illustrate their humanity. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I have a really smart friend named Julius Ona. Julius, a Nigerian-American director, he did a movie called Loose that came out back in August. Okay. It's about a transracial adoptee, Eritrean transracial adoptee, gets adopted by a white upper-middle-class family, and he's got a lot of pressure on him, and he feels like he kind of has to be perfect, okay? And there's a very dark undercurrent there. And so I saw Julius in a Q&A, and he said, I think that every person on the planet should be granted access to the full spectrum of humanity. And I say that almost every day. I say it in every interview because that statement is so profound, because I think any of us who live on the margins aren't granted access to the full spectrum of humanity. Absolutely. right? So me as a petite Asian woman, I'm not granted access to anger, for instance, right? Me as a middle-aged woman, I'm not granted access to sexuality, right? Me as an Asian in general, I'm not granted access to being disruptive or being aggressive or, being an agitator. And I think that rappers, for obvious reasons, are not granted access to the full spectrum either. And I really wanted to show people, I always say my name is Sophia Chang and I was raised by Wu-Tang. And writing the memoir made it even more clear to me why that is so true. So, the memoir is like a love letter to the Klan.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. I mean, I look at those guys so differently now.
Oh, good.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've known a lot of them for years, pretty close to a couple, and others just more on the fringes. Never met Inspector Deck to this day.
Deck is, but Deck and Jizz can be kind of elusive, as can Killa, right? And that's by choice.
Right.
They don't necessarily want to be in the mix in the way that a RZA does or Jizz. But let me ask you this. Did you listen to the bonus content?
I started the bonus content. I didn't finish.
The bonus content is some of the most emotionally compelling content in my memoir.
I heard it's like outtakes and the audio.
It's a little bit like outtakes, but there's a conversation that I have with Ray and Ghost, and every time I listen, I will cry.
Really?
Every time. Yeah.
Why?
Because that's not actually outtakes. That's us talking about our history.
Yeah. Right.
And me asking them, why me?
Yeah. I have that same question.
And it's a legitimate question. Yeah. Like, even in 93, when Only Protect Your Neck was out, even before Method Man came out as the single, we all knew. I mean, it was like black spray paint on a white wall. Right. It was very clear the Wu-Tang were going to be huge.
Right.
And, there were hordes of people that wanted to get next to them. And for whatever reason, Chuck, they just kind of went. This is kind of how I imagine that my ex was chosen at the Shaolin Temple. The abbot comes out and he looks at all of these kids and then goes that one. And that's how it felt with Wu-Tang. When I think back at it, I just feel like they went, no, yeah, that one right there. Yeah. That little yellow girl. Yeah. And like they pluck me out. And I always say to Ghost, I want him to keep me in his breast pocket, right? And he's like, "You're always there, Soph," and I feel like I'm always there. And why did they choose me? I think both Ray and Ghost said that it was God's plan, and Ray was like, "We needed you," and I never would have said that. That never would have occurred to me. I just, at the time, it just seemed organic. Like I just kind of jumped on them and I was like, I'm not letting you go. Yeah. Like you guys will never get rid of me. And they never wanted to. But what I hope people gather in hearing about the rapport between us is what you have taken from it because you're so astute. It is not necessarily just about Sophia Chang, right? It's not just because Sophia is this amazing person. It takes two to tango, right? So it took them also to say, we want her right here with us. Yeah. Like I say in my memoir, when I met Wu-Tang, I felt truly seen. And a friend of mine said, don't you think they would say the same? Wow. And that was deep.
Yeah, that's deep.
And I hope they would. Yeah. I hope they would. And I hope that you get a viewpoint into that through the memoir.
Okay. Now you have the actual voices in the memoir too, which is pretty cool. Like, if you read books, you know that quotes come, someone says something, the quote's in, and then they say that, but you actually have the people's voices. Almost everyone except, I would say, Dirty's not. Your kids are in there.
Yeah.
You do Dirty's voice once, I think.
I might have.
That was kind of funny.
Yeah, so I did something that nobody's ever done before. I have the author's voice, the character voices, 25 of them, original score, licensed music, scratched in by DJ Scratch, the greatest turntablist in the world. And I have sound design. And I have a clean and an explicit version. Nobody's ever done that on Audible, ever. Because I was thinking about, remember back in the day when you would see the albums, you would never go for the clean version.
Right.
Fuck no. You always go for the parental advisory, you know, the explicit content. So there are 2 different versions. And I tell everybody, unless you get easily offended or you want it for your children, listen to the dirty version because it's much more interesting. But yeah, it was a behemoth undertaking. It was really stressful. Yeah. There was probably 9 days that I cried every day at some point. Just stressed the fuck out. Because the truth of the matter is, Chuck, I did that whole shit by myself. Right. I got every voice. I hired the sound designer. I hired the sample clearance person. Shout out to Deborah Manis Gardner, the best clearance person in the industry. I kept on top of every single aspect of that project. So it was really stressful because I'm used to being the manager who keeps on top of all of it. Right. But now I'm the fucking artist. Yeah. So now I have to do both? Like, this doesn't calculate for me. This is not how it's supposed to happen. I never want to do it again, by the way. I can, but I don't want to. But it was a huge, it was a very ambitious project. And I knew that it would be hard, but I didn't know it would be quite that hard. It was harder than I thought it would be.
Yeah, I can imagine.
But it paid off, and I'll take my Grammy now. Thank you very much.
Hey, put that in the atmosphere.
Absolutely.
Now, a couple times you get emotional.
Oh, totally.
Now, I'm like, is she acting or is she choked up? Is she, which is it?
Do you think that I could act like that way?
I don't. Well.
Just to give you context, I was talking about the death of my father.
Yeah. So. I mean, I'm sorry. Yeah, well. Okay.
I wasn't.
Now I feel stupid.
No, I wasn't acting, but I mean, imagine talking about the passing of one of the closest people you've ever known. I don't know how not to cry. And, when I did the contract with Audible, we mutually stipulated that it had to be my voice because I could have hired an actor, right? We could have hired somebody who is fucking Academy Award winning actor. They never could have delivered that book the way that I did because it's my fucking life. Yeah, it's my story. And, in talking about losing Chris Lighty and my father, God rest their souls, it was, I knew that I would cry. And I asked my producer, Kat Lambricks, I said, do you want me to do it again? Because I cried really hard. And she said, no, she said, people rarely do this. People rarely emote this way. And I have to say, Chuck, that I've gotten so much positive feedback from that. Because people have said, thank you for being so vulnerable. And I just knew that nobody would be able to capture the emotion in the way that I did. And it was really, that was part of why I wanted to do an audiobook in the first place, was to really drive home those emotional moments. Whether it was, delight at the birth of my son or heartbreak, when Chris Lighty takes a fucking 9mm to his head,
Wow. Speaking of Chris, when he passed away, we had a lot of interactions. He wanted to, we were talking about him possibly investing in AllHipHop. And, you really nailed Chris's personality. Both sides, the side that I've seen and the side I haven't seen. And the side that I saw, which is the stoic, very business, like you had mentioned, maybe a little arrogant. And we never did business because he was that guy. And I had a lot of respect for him. So when he passed, now here's a little personal part about me. He was having issues in his marriage. I was going through a divorce at the same time. So when he died, I cried like a baby. I went jogging. I'm literally running down the highway crying. I was running real crazy back then because that was the way I coped. And I'm crying like a baby.
And are you saying that had something to do with the fact that you were going through something similar, so that Partially. It was a reflection of that?
Well, I understood. I felt at least the weight I own my own company. I run my own company. AllHipHop, 10 years ago, was a lot more stressful back then. I mean, I think it's been 10 since he passed, or in that range.
Seven. Yeah.
Okay, so same zone. And I feel like I could relate to him as an owner, as a man. Sure. And then also, you're holding a lot in.
Yeah, and as a husband and a father.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm a father too.
Yeah.
I have, we didn't talk about this, but I have joint, because, I have my daughter half the time. So I'm not a single mother who has the child all the time, but I do have that other side, so I deal with her a lot more than a weekend dad. So you shed a lot of light on him as a human being.
Same thing. Yeah. This full spectrum of humanity.
Yeah, definitely. And and a lot of people don't think he committed suicide. I'm not in a position to say either way, but I understand.
Look, and I talk about this in my memoir. There were conflicting opinions, right? A lot of people think that he was set up and that he was murdered. Others thought that he committed suicide. And when you lose somebody that abruptly and that violently, you're going to grieve. And for me, I had to be clear on how I was grieving. So grieving a murder and grieving a suicide, emotionally, they're very different, because grieving a murder, you're just enraged, right? You're thinking vendetta, like you're vindictive, you want revenge, you want to find the killer. Grieving a suicide, for me, it was about guilt. I saw Chris less than 24 hours before he killed himself. And I know that a lot of people think that he was murdered, and maybe it will come to light that that was true. That wasn't my viewpoint. But the bigger picture for me, Chuck, that came out of that was, I think that he was depressed. And I feel like in hip-hop, we don't talk enough about depression, substance abuse, suicide. I've been thinking about this a lot lately. I don't listen to current hip-hop, but what I do know is that there are a lot of young rappers out there talking about Xans, perks, Molly, lean, oxy. And I think a lot of these boys are addicted to opioids.
Facts.
And I think that we will continue to lose talent until we start having very open and honest conversations about these issues. And I cannot, I'm not inside. I don't know the artist personally. I don't know their management. I don't know if anybody has intervened or had those hard conversations. But if we just keep sweeping it under the rug, we're going to keep losing talent. And
people, real people too,
absolutely,
quote unquote real people.
Well, that's right, because there's also a whole generation of kids that are thinking about probably being influenced, right? And vulnerable to being influenced and saying, well, maybe I want to try to drink lean, or maybe I want to try this, or I want to try that. And I think it's kind of a conspiracy of silence. I think that if this was somehow, it's like the difference between crack and opioids, right? It's a conversation that we're all having socially and politically, and that suddenly, the government's in an uproar about opioids, but nobody gave a shit, and obviously that's about white supremacy, right? And, I was going to do a panel way back in March, but the timing didn't work out. I was going to do a panel dealing with this issue, specifically with these issues, because what I do know about hip-hop, and what I do know about hip-hop management and the world, is that people, and this is with any celebrity, okay? But I know hip-hop because it's where I lived. People are really afraid to confront somebody with something that is uncomfortable. They wouldn't necessarily be comfortable pulling you aside and saying, Chuck, we got to talk. You're drinking, it's getting out of control. Right. Do you know what I'm saying? Or you're, or whatever it is. You're, Sophia, you're doing cocaine. You think you're a casual user, but clearly it's kind of taking over your life. And, I'm worried about your health. I just don't know how many people are having those conversations, because if I'm somebody in your world and you are rich and you are famous and you grant me access and I get my dick sucked and I'm getting so much pussy, maybe I don't want to risk that. Right? Yeah. I don't want to jeopardize that, because this life is fucking amazing. Yeah. But I hope that people would think, first of all, if that's what you're thinking about yourself and not about Chuck. Absolutely. But second of all, if you want to be cynical about it, this life might be fucking over if Chuck kills himself. Because I think in talking about suicide to me isn't just what Chris Lighty did. Suicide isn't just hanging yourself. I think, I have a very dear, brilliant friend named Casey Lehman, a writer from Jackson, Mississippi, and he wrote this amazing essay called How to Kill Yourself and Others Slowly in America. And I think that drug abuse and substance abuse is kind of a slow way to kill yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Sticky Fingers you just made me think of a rap, Sticky Fingers. He said, I ain't a killer, but I'm killing myself. Smoke, death, fuck, bitches raw on the kitchen floor. So,
And when did he write those lyrics?
94.
Yeah, like in the heyday of Onyx.
Yeah.
So I think that people have been saying stuff.
Yeah, absolutely. That's it. A lot of people from, the 40 and up crew are very judgmental, and I'm like, dude, like you're older now, and you're looking at it from an older person's perspective.
Maybe as a parent.
Right, or as a parent, absolutely. And I'm like, it was really all there. The drugs might have been 40s and maybe weed, depending on your view. Cocaine was there, crack was there. It was kind of all there, and the depression had a different form. So there was a lot of suicide raps back then. Biggie had one. Kool G Rap had one. Sticky Fingers rapped about it all the time, and it was a thing. DMX was doing crack since, he was a teenager. It was always there, but we just looked at it differently because the masculinity was different too. We were hard back then.
And you don't think it's the same now? You don't think there's the same kind of mandate to be hard?
No, not at all. I mean, I have a viewpoint on that, and I don't think the kids are the same at all. And I'm not.
Well, that's a good thing then, isn't it?
Yeah, it can be a good thing. I think there's a balance. You have, I think, Warrior on the back of there.
On the back of my jacket,
back of your jacket.
Yeah.
And I was like, Warrior. I personally, I have views that you need to be you have to have balance.
Of course.
Yeah.
A yin and the yang.
Yeah.
But so are you saying, so if we're talking about toxic masculinity, right? If you're saying that it is not as pervasive, then shouldn't we be more open to the conversation?
I think we are.
Okay, good.
I think we are. There's a lot of people out there,
good.
Myself included, who talk a lot more about mental health,
good.
About being depressed, about being sad. Who was sad back in the day? I mean, my father died when I was a teenager, and I didn't get counseling. I didn't smoke or drink at all I still really don't, but every now and then I drink something here and there. But for the most part, I didn't smoke or drink, and I'm thinking back, like, how did I do that? How did I cope?
Right.
Well, it came out in different ways.
Right.
Anger is one of them.
Right.
And other things, but I didn't smoke or drink, so
right.
I needed other outlets. I overworked.
Yeah. Well, it's like Einstein's. So I'm going to say something scientific, and I actually think I'm going to get this totally wrong, but isn't there a theory? Is it Einstein's theory that energy doesn't go anywhere?
Absolutely.
Right.
It's
so
destroyed nor.
That's right. So you might think that you're suppressing something and that you're stuffing it down, but as my girlfriend, God rest her soul, Sonia, my mentor, would say, that shit comes out sideways.
Yeah, definitely.
So you think that you're effectively like a French press. You think that you're effectively étouffé, is what the French would say. Like you're getting it down, but it could come out sideways. Like it could come out yelling at your kids, right? Or, losing your shit at a meeting or whatever it is. And I think that what I want more than anything is for there to be a broader, deeper omnipresent conversation around it, so that we can talk about these things in a way that it gets more comfortable for me to pull over an artist and say, yo, we need to have a conversation.
Right. Yeah.
And because we need to destigmatize it, right? The problem is that mental health is stigmatized. Like in the Asian community, there are so many of us that don't get help because, particularly if we're the children of immigrants, it's just kind of seen as a weakness. Mental illness is not a weakness. It is an illness. You can't just tell somebody, what's wrong with you? Get out of bed. I have friends that were taught this as young kids, just, come on, shake it off. Well, if you know anything about mental health, and from the little I know, you can't actually do that because that shit is in your fucking brain. Like it's in the actual matter of your brain. And I really wish that people would get more educated about it, remove the stigma from it, and have more open conversations around it. We should be dealing with it like any other illness.
Absolutely. Wonderful. Now, switch directions.
Okay.
We talked about being hard. There's a moment in the book where, your male friends, Raphael Sadiq and someone else. Meth. They're like, you can't get a man because you're too hard. And I'm like, holy, we're getting deep. And I'm like, I know a lot of people that fit a similar profile as you. They're, top level women in the game. You're dealing with a lot of men. And I'm like, wow, that was, that was a moment.
Yeah. Okay. So I appreciate you pointing that out. I mean, look, I was a woman, and a petite one, not just in the music business, which is extremely very male, but also hip hop, which is hyper masculine, hyper machismo. So part of how I coped was that I just kind of I was hard from when I was very young. But I just had to present in a very specific way. And I'm sure there were times that I overcompensated. And when I met Raphael in 2007, I had just split up with my ex. And the conversation that you're referencing, he was like, Soph, because I was managing him at the time, he said, it's going to be hard for you to find a man because you're too hard. And I was like, what? I'm not too hard. And I hung up with him, and I pick up the phone, and I call Meth, and I was like, peace, Meth, you won't believe what Raphael said. And he was like, oh, so peace, Sophie, what happened? I was like, he said that I'm not gonna be able to find a man because I'm too hard. And I'm just ranting on, and I'm just so mad, and there's just silence on the other end of the phone, and I'm like looking at my phone because I think we've been disconnected. And I was like, Meth? And then I just hear this, well, Sophie, you are kind of hard, though. And I think that it's a lesson that I actually thought that I had learned. But, as a woman, as an Asian, as a small Asian, again, in an extremely male milieu, which is pretty much every fucking industry, right? I had to present in a certain way, and I had to go hard. Yeah. And I had to, going back to balance and yin-yang, right? I had to learn how to show my soft side, not necessarily in business and in negotiations, but in terms of meeting somebody else, right? And I think that what I always said was, look, I pitbull all fucking day long. I'm the bulldog all day long, and I'll go hard. But at the end of the day, Chuck, I want to come home. I want to walk through that door. I want to fucking take off the Superwoman cape. I want to hang that shit up, and I want to just curl up in my man's lap and just purr like a kitten and be like, babe, yo, let me tell you about my day. And I want my man to be like, baby, it's all good. Yeah. It's all good. And there is a very, very soft side of me. In the day, it's like hard edges and sharp angles. But at night, it's soft curves, And I think that a lot of men didn't necessarily see that. And it's not for everybody to see, right? I'm not necessarily going to present that way. But yeah, for them, because, they see me in a work situation. Meth sees me, I'm around fucking 9 guys. Most of them are 6 foot and bigger, and I'm trying to help wrangle them to get them on the. So you have to imagine, Chuck, that Raphael and Meth have only ever really seen me in work situations, and so I'm kind of bossing everybody around. I'm this little girl bossing everybody around, so I'm sure they're going, who wants to be with that?
Oh my gosh.
She's so bossy. She's yelling at everybody all the time. I mean, I've met people that are like, you don't remember me, but I remember you because you were yelling at everybody.
Right.
I mean, if you see me, I tell people a couple of things. Until you've seen me as a mother, you haven't seen half of me. Like, half of me isn't even here with you right now. Half of me is with my children. And unless you see me with Wu-Tang, you really don't know the whole of me. Because once you see me with Wu-Tang, you're like, oh, okay, I get it.
Right.
I get it.
Gotcha.
So, but you listen to the rest of the memoir, so you do know
Yeah.
that I did meet somebody named William, and I fell deeply, deeply, deeply in love. And he got the soft girl.
Yeah.
He got the girl.
Now, the irony is not missed on me that you were with a Shaolin monk, had kids by one, and was in this intimate business and personal relationship with Wu-Tang. That's just mind-blowing irony. I'm like, why am I? I'm like, and you really you brought it home nicely, and I'm just like, what am I hearing right now? It's and you're I don't know how you measure martial arts, but can you speak to that too?
Okay, so I want to give this context for your viewers.
Yes.
I was born and raised in Vancouver, so I'm a yellow girl growing up in a white world, and I wanted to be white. I was born in '65. So I was raised with all of the images I saw were essentially of whiteness, so I wanted to be white. Then I moved to New York. Then I hear The Message in 12th grade, and then I moved to New York, and I'm embraced by the hip-hop community, and then I meet Wu-Tang, and Wu-Tang introduced me back to my culture.
Wow.
So, Wu-Tang is named after Udang, which is a mountain in Hebei province where Taiji was founded. What do they call their boroughs? Staten Island. They call it
Shaolin.
Exactly. And their whole ethos is about Kung Fu. So they introduced me to Kung Fu movies, and they introduced me to John Woo, the greatest director to ever live, and his muse, the greatest actor that ever lived, Chow Yun-fat. And so through this chamber, I see my culture and therefore myself, right? Through a different lens, and I embrace my culture. Then I'm watching all these Kung Fu movies, and I'm like, I want to do Kung Fu. So my girlfriend Maria Ma and I, we start looking for a place to train, and we hear there's a Shaolin monk teaching Kung Fu. And for those of you that don't know what that means, that's like hearing that Serena Williams is teaching tennis down the street. So we found him, and I started to train, and I left the music business, as I said, and I fell in love, and we had children. But what is incredible, Chuck, is that if it were not for Wu-Tang, I would not have the 2 children that I do. I might have other children, but not those children. Right. I would not at 54 be maintaining a 6-day-a-week Kung Fu practice. I will do Kung Fu for the rest of my life in some form or fashion. And I am stronger than I've ever been in my life at 54. And I started at 30. It's never too late to start. And my body is this amazing temple. It is clean. It is clear of toxins, it is pure, and it is strong. And I also learned about Chan Buddhism. My ex, Shi Yanming, is the greatest martial artist in the world. Yeah. I mean, I have...
articulate that well.
We went on tour with the Beijing Wushu team, and the Beijing Wushu team is the greatest Wushu team in the world. And they're fucking animals.
And you said he's top in China?
He was right. He was the top. He was the number 1 fighter in China 2 years running. So, yeah. So he's not only like a martial artist in terms of forms and weapons and all that stuff. He's a fighter. Like, he could really kill somebody with his bare hands and feet, like that. There's no doubt about it. So, but again, it's that in addition to the Chan Buddhism, which makes the Shaolin Temple so special, and that's what I'm so grateful for, that is a huge part of what he taught me and what we passed on to our children.
Right. Redman's in my top 5, dead or alive. I love the story about Redman calling outside your window, and I don't want to give it all away because, I want people to get the book, but I'll just say there's some hilarious Redman moments. What do you call him?
I call him Redman because his real name is Reggie
Yeah.
Noble, so I just conflated them and I call him Redman.
Yeah, so I mean, there's so much in this book, and it's But listen,
I love you, Redman,
and
I miss you. Where are you?
He's hard to catch. But I got to give you so much props because as a person that's just spent his career interviewing people, writing about other people's lives, sometimes we wonder, is our life worth telling? Do people care about what I got to say, what I see, what I've seen? You talk about your father a lot. I mean, I think, I instantly thought about my dad, and I'm like, man, I got a story to tell. Does anybody care about this story? I wrestle with it. I've been working on a book for about 3 years minimum, and maybe 4, and I keep wondering, will anyone care? But I'm not saying this about me. I'm saying this about you. You really, really, really do a great job in not only making people care, but the story stands alone as being worthy.
Thank you, Chuck. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So I have a lot to say to that. I am so grateful, whether my audiobook sells 2,000, 2 million copies, I'm not that attached to the outcome of that. Mm-hmm. What I'm grateful for is that Audible and that Reese Witherspoon saw my story as worthy of telling. Mm-hmm. And then I got to tell my story. And for history that will never be erased, is my mother's story of escaping from North Korea at 14. Right. Is my father's story of being abused by his Japanese teacher during the Japanese annexation of Korea. My father, God rest his soul, isn't here to tell his story anymore. And so I get to memorialize that. In addition to, yes, of course, Wu-Tang and Redman and A Tribe Called Quest and Q-Tip and D'Angelo and Raphael. I went to Fife's memorial, God rest his soul. And Quest Green, who was one of his dear friends, was the MC, presided over the evening. And during one of the breaks, when he was introducing somebody that was going to come up and speak, he just paced up and down the stage and he kept saying, "Tell your story. Tell your story." He said those 3 words over and over and over again, and they impacted me deeply. And, that could mean a lot of different things for a lot of people, but I know what the fuck it meant for me. Yeah. And for me, it meant Fife Dog's not here anymore. Yeah. He has a legacy, but he cannot continue to tell his story. Therefore, it is incumbent upon all of us in this room to continue to tell our stories. And this is how I feel in terms of whether or not I think anybody would be interested or I think our story is worthy to tell. I think everybody's story is worthy of telling. How many people are going to be interested? That's beyond our control. But I think particularly for those of us who live on the margins, okay? It is incumbent upon us not only to tell our stories, but to facilitate the telling of other stories. Because if you live on the margins, what we want is to get into the center, because the center is where the power resides, okay? The center is where the 8-figure deals are cut. Okay. The center is, and it's not just the boardroom, it's the cigar bar. Right. It's the clubhouse. Yeah. It's the back 9. Mm-hmm. And I know I've never been welcomed into the center like that. But I also know that I will fucking make my way in there. I will kick and I will punch my way in. And when I do, I don't let the door close behind me. Right. I keep that shit open, right? Mm-hmm. Mob deep. Once I get out, I'm going to put on all my people, right? So I think that by telling our stories, this is how we build community and learn about each other. When you learn about each other, you engender empathy. When you engender empathy, we then start to see each other as human. And when you can humanize somebody, it is much harder to commit the atrocities that we see going on, right there on 8th Avenue.
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell your story. And that takes on a myriad forms, right? Mm-hmm. It isn't just, let me do what I did, which is traditional, writing a memoir. It could also be, maybe you're a sculptor. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't necessarily have to be poetic, right? My ex-sister-in-law, Carrie Goldberg, is an attorney at the forefront of victims' rights laws and cyber assault and internet privacy. She is telling her story, representing victims, right? So there's so many ways to do this. So 4 years is a long-ass time. Fucking finish it. Yeah. Because if nothing else, don't you just want to put it down?
Yeah, definitely. Now, did it take 6 months?
It took me, so I handed in the first draft in 4 months, probably 90,000 words in 4 months, which is unheard of.
Wow.
And then I probably did 6 drafts, but I think I'm the fastest writer I know. My agent was like, yo, I've never seen anybody write this fast. You write faster than we can read, which is unheard of. Look, it was really hard at first, Chuck, right? It was like hot needles in my eye. Like, let me go clean the grout out, the tiles in my bathroom. I just made up any excuse, and I was an Olympic-level procrastinator. And I don't know what it was that was a catalyst, but I turned a corner. Yeah. And once I turned that corner, I just wrote so fast. And now I know that I can write fast, and that's a gift. I mean, I helped extraordinarily talented men tell their stories for 30 years. Yeah. And what I know now, Chuck, is the reason that I was so good at it, and I don't think there's anybody better at this than me, and I mean that, is that because I myself am a storyteller. But they helped me get there, right? Yeah. Being friends with somebody like D'Angelo, one of the greatest artists of all time, one of the greatest writers of all time. And talking to him about music or politics or movies or documentaries, he's teaching me how to be a storyteller. So that is a tremendous privilege of me being Paul Simon, for God's sake.
Yeah, I mean, we haven't even talked about Paul Simon, the Ramones. That's a lot.
Having the privilege of working closely with people like this has absolutely, even though I wasn't aware of it at the time, has trained me to be a storyteller. And think about what you've done. You've been in this way deeper and for way longer than I have.
Well, yeah.
You've been around... you've been around these storytellers, and you've been writing. I just started fucking writing like last year. Right. And now I'm an author, and people are paying me to do this shit. Yeah. It is never too late. Yeah. It is never too late. I call my memoir a coming-of-age story. I have had many comings of age, and one of them happened at 53, go figure. Yeah. So it's never too late to pick up and do something that you've always wanted to do. So finish your fucking book.
All right.
This is me being a manager.
Right. One thing I wanted to ask you is you and Chris Lighty were talking about a movie on his life. Any chance whatsoever that could still come to life?
I don't know. I think that's complicated. I mean, I'm working on a scripted television show right now about my life. Yep. And kind of adapting my life into a dramedy, which is my primary focus now. And in terms of doing something about Chris, I mean, number one, if I did it, and she knows about this, I would absolutely do this with his eldest daughter, Tiffany, who's amazing. And it's complicated. I want to do it because I think there is more there to tell. And again, what I think that I did for the Klan, I know that I also did for Chris Lighty, which was, it's like you said, well, we all saw this thing, this man, and he was big, and he was imposing, he was intimidating, and he could scare the shit out of people. And he enjoyed that. He liked that, right? He delighted in that. But again, Chris crossed my threshold, and that was my boy. Like, that was my fucking heart. He was just, he was my rock of Gibraltar.
Yeah. Wow.
And I'm grateful for every moment that we spent together.
Yeah. Talk about, the series you're working on a little bit, if you can.
I can.
You stole that question from me. It was definitely.
It was
next.
there?
Yeah, it was next.
Thank you. It's scripted. It's a dramedy. There's, I actually started writing it, and I made myself laugh.
Wow, that's good.
I was literally writing and laughing out loud. But it's not a straight up broad comedy like that. It's definitely a dramedy because it's me, you meet me. The chapter was Things Fall Apart.
Okay.
And you know that chapter.
Mm-hmm.
And essentially you meet me and I'm a middle-aged woman and I've kind of lost everything. Mm-hmm. Because when you think about my life, when Yan Ming and I split up, Yan Ming wasn't just my husband. Mm-hmm. He was my best friend. Yeah. And that was fucking devastating. He was the father of my children. Still is the father of my children, obviously. He was also my business partner. Mm-hmm. He was my client. And it was my dream. His dream of replicating the Shaolin Temple was also my dream. So walking away from Yan Ming means I walk away from all that shit. Yeah. And then I wake up and I'm like, what the fuck? Yeah. Yeah. I'm rebuilding at 40. Yeah. That's a lot. Yeah. That's a lot. And so that's kind of where, boom, that's the entry point. For the television show, and there will obviously be some hip-hop in it. It's not a hip-hop show.
Okay, good to know.
Yeah.
That's good to know, actually.
You mean it's good to know that it's not a hip-hop show?
A lot of people, I think, lean on that a little too much, especially now. I mean, hip-hop's officially the number one genre, which we've known it
for a long time, people. Hello!
Right. So that's good to know, and I think it'll make it more interesting.
Thank you. Yeah. No, I think that's... It's not a hip hop show. Other people can do that show and probably do it better than me. But I could also never, you know this, Chuck. I could never tell the story of Sophia Chang without hip hop being in there because it just doesn't make sense.
We want your story.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So I have one more question.
Okay.
In the script, the series, Wu-Tang, an American drama.
Yes.
An American saga.
Yeah.
There's a character. And in hindsight, I'm listening to. I'm like, wait, that's Soph, but doesn't look like you. Looks like a Latina. Is that you?
It was supposed to be me. Yeah, I can't believe you picked up on that.
Oh,
yeah,
oh,
you're not. Good. Jeff Sledge did the same thing. He texted me. He was like, "Yo, is this you?"
Right. I'm like, that's they're not getting that one passed on me. What, you didn't sign off like you got or something?
That was... You didn't sign off?
No.
Oh, I didn't even know that.
Oh, I may not.
Anyway. That was a little bit complicated because I was already developing my own show. And so, how do you do that? How do you have Sophia Chang both depicted in that show and in your show? But... Thank you for picking up on that because, yeah.
Yeah. All right. Well, in conclusion, I have to say you are indeed the baddest bitch in the room.
Thank you.
I took a picture with you. I didn't know who you were. Just knew I got to take a picture with her. Got to. And she was taking pictures with everybody that night. Let me tell you, one of the stars of Wu-Tang and American Saga dissed the mess out of me. I saw you taking pictures with this person. And then I said, "Can I get one too?" He was like, "I'll be back." And just walked away. I was like, "What? How does?" So.
Well, one of the things I have to say is it's always easier when you're a woman, especially one that looks like me. But also, the whole cast of that show, they knew who I was because RZA had already prepped them. So when I met them, because I met a lot of them early, way back in February, they all knew who I was because he had made it clear Sophia Chang, this and that, and this and that. And I actually just recently, somebody sent me a link to a video where people were being interviewed for, my friend Dan Charnas wrote this amazing book, The Big Payback. And, you know, they adapted it into a television show. And so they were interviewing the cast, and there was a woman on there that said, yeah, you know, there's this woman named Sophia Chang, and she was in hip hop and blah, blah, blah. And she's really amazing and she's really inspiring, and I wish I'd known about her sooner. And I was like, oh shit, okay. So there is an awareness out there. But yeah, the cast were aware of me because RZA and whoever else, whether the producers had said, you know, this is who she was to us. So that was a fun night.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That was a great night.
That was a lovely night.
I met a lot of people, including yourself, who I hadn't met before, and the cast was awesome.
Yeah.
And the show, I thought, is pretty daggone good.
Yeah.
I can't speak from a person that was there, per se, but...
Me neither. I wasn't there in that early. Yeah. I mean, they went back early. Yeah, I wasn't there either.
Right. Any last words, and also, where can people find you?
So, my last words are... Tell your story. Tell your story. Go get my audiobook. It's on Audible. Where can people find me? People can find me. The platform where I'm the most active and that I think suits me the best is Instagram, and that's at Soph Chang NYC. Can you Chiron this too? Can you Chiron it?
Sure.
Okay, at Soph Chang NYC, SophChangNYC, and on Twitter, at Soph Chang. My Facebook is the same as my Instagram, but that's a pretty anemic presence there. Really where I am is on Instagram. And check in every Friday night for my new hit Instagram series, Suck a Dick.
Oh!